we're going to start with the AL West. If you want to go super in depth and kind of look at some of the tools Burke uses to analyze these teams, go check out the guide. We'll start with the defending champs. And when you look at the AL West, you're going to see big-time favorites to win the division, 175 for the Astros when you look at the odds. The team that made the postseason last year outside of them, the Seattle Mariners, and then there's going to be a precipitous drop. The Angels at 750, the Rangers at 8.5 to 1, and the Athletics, who are a farm team last year, at 250 to 1. Okay, we start with the champs in the West, and I'll get to them all and Dustin on this as well. Set up nicely for a title defense. They're the American League's best team in my estimation. No Verlander, but they've got plenty with Javier and Valdez and Garcia. That should be enough to win this division. We were concerned, as you mentioned earlier, Amal, the Altuve thumb injury is going to keep him out a couple of months. They were also concerned about Alvarez, but it looks like he's coming back already. So with that hand injury, he should be okay. Not a lot of flaws here. Dusty Baker got the elephant off his back, as you would say, with the Astros last year and winning a championship. No pressure. Here comes the Astros, Amal.
Yeah, absolutely right. They added in Jose Abreu from the White Sox. Didn't necessarily have a great year last year for, in terms of his standards from a homer standpoint, but still batted .304. He's a tremendous guy, and he can give you a lot of lift. I like Pena at shortstop. Bregman's tremendous over at third base. This infield is still one of the best in baseball. And then I think Framber Valdez is a guy at 25 to 1 you could bet to win the Cy Young Award. I thought last year, when you look at quality starts, there was nobody better in baseball, and I thought he was a guy that should have been in far more consideration for the Cy Young Award. He's a tremendous one. You mentioned Dusty. I think it benefits him that they won, where usually going back-to-back is more difficult. But I think the fact that you alluded to it, he got the monkey off his back. He's a great people person. He knows how to deal with personalities and egos and everything else. And this team is going to be extremely dangerous. I don't know if I'm going to sign off with you on them being the best team in the American League. I think the Yankees starting pitching is a little bit better, even though Rodon's banged up right now. I think the Yankees could be right there. Offensively, I would select the Astros, but I think those are your two front runners in the American League.
I think that's fair, and Big Guy will come to you now. The Astros, it's not a crazy win total. We've seen some of these, the Dodgers over the past couple of years, the Yankees, of course, get up into the hundreds, 103. 95.5 is not terrible for the Astros if you were to go over. They're 175 favorites in division, 310 pennant, and 6 to 1 World Series. What do you got on the Astros?
Well, it's crazy that they're going to lose the AL Cy Young Award winner, and they're going to be just as good. They'll probably go over the 95.5. I agree with them all. I think both Valdez and Javier are live bets right now for the Cy Young. And on the MVP side of things, last year I had Yordan Alvarez 60 to 1 to be the AL MVP. Just absolutely annihilated by Aaron Judge's season. But Aaron Judge doesn't exist. I think I have a shot there with Alvarez. He was so good. I think there's another guy on this roster, though, who can contend for MVP, and that's Kyle Tucker. I really like Kyle Tucker. He's still young. He's a big guy out there in right field. And he's capable of being a 30-30 guy. I almost called 30 for 30, but a 30-30 guy. They're absolutely loaded. And then you get to the bullpen. And I'm a big proponent of, I like betting on teams that have good bullpens. And I love this pen. The back end is great with Presley. Montero's turned into a very good setup man. They added Hector Neris from Philly last year, who's not a closer, but I do like him as a setup guy. And Ryan Stanek throws 100 miles an hour. So I'm very high on the Astros, as everyone else is.
Well, listen, Verlander's a significant blow. McCullers' elbow is going to be something to pay attention to, but I thought Amal laid it out with that rotation. That's plenty to win this division. And speaking of the division, let's go on to the Mariners. A surprise team last year, made the postseason. It's interesting because they defied a lot of advanced metrics in the process, right? In particular, you expect some regression with this pitching staff, Logan Gilbert and others. They do have Julio Rodriguez, who is about as much fun to watch as any player in baseball. 22-year-old rookie of the year last year in the American. It's a very good team. They upgraded their lineup. You mentioned Hernandez when we were talking on the phone a little bit earlier. Colton Wong at second base is an upgrade for the Mariners here. We have the odds set right now for the Mariners. 87.5 win total, 320 in division, 9 to 1 pennant, and 19 to 1 Amal Shaw World Series.
Great points you make here, Patrick, but I'll tell you what, to me, the bet I would make in this division is the M's to win it, because if Houston has any kind of struggles, despite the fact that I believe they're the second best team in the AL, when you look at the top of this rotation, with Luis Castillo and Robbie Ray, and they signed Luis Castillo to a long-term deal. I think that 1-2 combination is probably as good as anybody in the American League. I think they can be extremely dangerous. Logan Gilbert had a tremendous year last year. You mentioned Rodriguez. I don't know if there's a more exciting, fun player to watch in baseball. I love that the M's signed him to a long-term deal. Maybe this team makes some acquisitions as the season goes along. Look, I'm not a big Colton Wong guy from a standpoint of production, but I feel like Joe Morgan used to use this line all the time when he would describe Jason Worth when he was with Washington and the Phillies. He goes, he's a winning ball player. And I feel like Wong brings that dynamic to the team. He's a guy that just makes plays in a way that you may not see in the box score, but he's a winning ball player, in my opinion. Suarez has got to do well. If he does well, I think this team can be dangerous. I think the M's are not a bad bet at plus 320 to win the division for a couple of reasons. One, you're getting pretty decent odds in what I believe to be a two-team race in this division. Texas could potentially challenge. I don't think they do. And if Houston has any kind of drop-off, as the season progresses, Patrick, you'll be able to get a better number, and then you might be able to take Houston as a plus price instead of laying the minus 175.
I like it, Amal. I like the plus price, the plus 320 in division with the AL West and the Mariners. Big Guy, take your time here because I know you have a lot to say. We're going to come back and continue with the baseball. I got a little pep in my step talking baseball. We used to do it on our old show. We used to bet. I was going to say a bad word. We used to bet a lot on baseball and get so into it. Dustin and I both grew up number one as far as sport baseball fans, and so we'll have some fun here on Sharp Money throughout the summer. But your take on the Mariners, plus 320 in division.
Well, I think they're a sign of this division as a whole over the last few years. I think it's getting better and better, and they're very close to taking that next step. Like player for player, they're not far off from the Astros. I'm having trouble figuring out how I'm handicapping Luis Castillo because I have two ways of viewing him. One, he just got paid, so is he going to be the same pitcher he was when he was pitching for a contract a year ago, or does he not care because he got paid and it's guaranteed money and he'll throw until his arm falls off this year? So I'm going back and forth on that. But I do like the rotation. I think they're very deep with arms. I think George Kirby is a super sleeper for them. He's probably not a Cy Young guy, but he doesn't walk guys. And I love guys like that. He's super accurate. And I see him taking the next step as a pitcher this year, becoming maybe even the number 2 over Robbie Ray. Lineup-wise, the addition of Teoscar Hernandez is interesting because he was good in Toronto. I think he can be better.
You can get more out of him.
I'm just concerned.
You can get more out of him.
I'm concerned about the ballpark because the ballpark is very tough on hitters. Here's a key. Jared Kelenic. He was the linchpin of the Edwin Diaz trade. He was awful a year ago. He's a major prospect. However, this spring, hammering the ball. Left the game yesterday with like a leg injury. I don't think it's anything major, but absolutely crushing the ball. If he is any bit as what he was projected to be, which is like a 2020 guy, and he's still pretty young, I mean, this lineup doesn't have a lot of holes in it. And shout out to my guy behind the plate, Big Dumper, Cal Raleigh. Pure power guy, played with torn ligaments in his thumb down the stretch last year, still hit 27 dingers. It's just a very likable team.
Kelenic was in yippee territory last year, if we're being fair.
No, he was bad. He was very bad, but this spring looks totally different. And I'm a big believer in baseball, especially compared to other sports, of buying low on those super talented guys for them to come back and figure it out a year or two later.
Amal, you and I both were effusive about Julio Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I mean, he's like 6'3", 6'4", fast as all get out, hit like 30 or close to 30 bombs as a rookie. Hit for average as well last year on his way to the Rookie of the Year. I'm not sure there's a more exciting young player, sub-23 in baseball.
He only had 28 homers, 75 ribbies, 25.
As a rookie?
25 steals and batted .284. I mean, this guy's
ridiculous.
Yeah, he's absolutely insane. So much fun to watch. Love the personality. You mentioned it. Big kid, 6'3", 228, can do it all. Look, I'm telling you, when you look at these divisions, and we haven't gone through them all yet, but obviously we just started today. But when you look from an odds standpoint, the M's might be the best bet of anybody to win a division because when you look at the National League East, it's extremely competitive. When you look in the NL East, you do have Toronto. Obviously, they're with the Yankees. But I wouldn't look at Boston and some of these other teams. But to me, the West is just a two-team race. DeGrom's got to be able to pitch 32, 33 starts. Outside of Simeon and Seager there up the middle, I don't know how good that team is necessarily. We'll see what happens. But I still think at plus 320, you got to look at the M's.
We'll get to the Rangers next, as well as the Angels. Ohtani, Trout, and the guy they call the ski mask, Anthony Rendon. Let's be fair. He robbed that organization. AL West continues next here, Sharp Money. Okay, AL Westing. The Angels, your third betting favorite at 7.5 to 1. So let's discuss this team. If you dig, and we've talked for years about this team, Dustin Sweetelson, and it's always comes down to the pitching, right? But if you dig into the numbers, the pitching made big strides last year. They get rid of Madden. This is going to be first full season for Phil Nevin. Ohtani and Trout are two of the greats ever. And then you add Rendon. Now, Rendon, who's played a total of 157 games in 3 seasons for the Angels. It's been a disaster. Remember, they signed him off the championship with the Nats, and he was awesome. Not just regular season, but postseason for the Nats that year. Rendon was spectacular. He's 32 years old, maybe a little too late to catch lightning in a bottle with the injury history. But they do add Renfroe and his 29 bombs from the Brewers. Let's start here. Angels, who are your third betting favorite in the AL West, Amal Shaw.
Yeah, I'm not as high on this team as you are. You know, I thought Tyler Anderson had a tremendous year last year, quietly under the radar, 2.57 ERA with a 15-5 record. He was tremendous. You know, obviously, we know what Ohtani can do, but how much can he pitch for you is the big question mark. Sandoval wasn't bad with an ERA under 3, 6-9 record. To me, the question is, can they get consistency from offensive guys and offensive production outside of Ohtani and Trout? That's where the real problem is. You mentioned Rendon, absolute dude for the Washington Nationals, goes to the Angels and then goes on the Albert Pujols program, which is, I'm just not going to do anything, basically. And it's been an absolute disaster for them. If they can get on track, I think they could be competitive. I like their pitching. I don't know if they're a team that can legitimately make a push for the division, but I think they're one you got to pay attention to potentially make the playoffs if they get off to a good start.
Take a look at the AL West and the numbers. The Angels, who won 73 games last year, big guy, they'd have to improve big time. Their total set at 82.5. That's always going to be shaded up because of the Trout and Ohtani angle. You got them 7.5 to 1 in division. The pennant, they're 20 to 1 and 45 to 1 World Series. What do you got on the Angels, Dustin?
I mean, they're absolutely going to contend for a wild card spot here with the way they opened things up and added a few more teams to it. The issue with the Angels is the same issue it's been for the last few years, is there's not enough elite starting pitching. But I will say, I think they have a little bit more depth maybe than years past. I thought Detmers popped for a little bit a year ago, and I'm not concerned at all about the offense. That's the thing. It's like there are things that they can add if they're in contention, if they believe that like they can sustain this midseason in starting pitching and bullpen help that can propel them to that next level down the home stretch in the second half of the season. I do think they have enough offense to make some noise, especially if their top prospect, Logan O'Hoppe, starts the year behind the plate for them. Good power hitter, brings a lot of offense to the table. I think Brandon Drury, coming off a career year, could go either way at second base for them, but he's a guy who was an elite prospect at one point and has had a couple of really good all-star caliber seasons at the major league level. And then in the outfield, I think it's a very solid outfield. Obviously, Trout in the middle, but Hunter Renfroe is a guy who's on a lot of winning teams in his past. If you go and look, key piece for Tampa, had a good year with Boston, like was with the Brewers a year ago. He's a good right-handed power bat. And Taylor Ward is coming off a very good season in left field, hit .283. I think the Angels are a solid team, capable of doing more. The concern is, if they're not close enough, do they trade Ohtani during the season? If they opt to keep him and they add pieces, I do believe there's enough here to be an interesting team down the stretch.
A couple things I want to address. You mentioned Hunter Renfroe. Patrick, let me tell you, when Hunter Renfroe comes up with runners on base and I've got an under, I am ecstatic.
20. He struggles? You're telling me he struggles?
I'm just saying, I'm not worried about Hunter Renfroe beating me. That's all I'll say. And the other thing, if you're the Angels, Artie Moreno pulled the team off the market, is no longer selling as of this current season. But if you trade away Shohei Ohtani during the season, I think you're going to have a mutiny on your hands in Orange County. I just don't think you can do it. And if he's going to walk in free agency, so be it. But you need him for the full 162.
Would you like to respond, Dustin?
Yeah, I mean, he's a good hit. I don't understand the Hunter Renfroe shade. Like,
he's not that good.
He's like their fifth best bat, and he's going to hit 30 homers.
The fifth best on the Angels makes you really their third best player.
How?
because the other guy, I mean, they're just not that good of a team.
The offense is good. No, I don't agree with that. The offense is it's a
is
very
legit.
solid offense. It's a good enough offense to make the playoffs if they had a number 2 and number 3 starter.
You don't like Anderson?
I think he's more of a 3-4 than he is a 2.
That's fair. I don't argue with that.
Totally.
That's fair.
I think they have a lot of
Okay.
3-4 guys. I think that's their issue.
Well, they're set at 82.5 as far as their win total, that being the Angels. The Rangers are also set at 82.5. Might surprise you a little bit. Just to tick back in division, the Angels 7.5 to 1. The Rangers 8.5 to 1. It's interesting with the Rangers. This rebuild may be nearly complete, Dustin and Amal. They added DeGrom to an underrated rotation from last year. Exciting times ahead for the Rangers. Corey Seager, obviously, I think the new shift rules will help him. If you look at some of the numbers on Corey Seager, as far as he got crushed by the shift, young pitchers making their debuts, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about the Rangers. Amal, we'll start with you here.
Yeah, look, the key is going to be Jacob DeGrom. How healthy can he be? If he's healthy, then this team's really dangerous. We know that. I really like Martin Perez. He was a guy that I would bet on a lot last year. He's very effective, does a tremendous job. Dustin, you pointed out earlier, you like pitchers that don't walk guys. He's one of those guys.
By the way, sorry to interrupt, he stunk up until last year. I don't know what happened. He was awesome.
Yeah, he was tremendous last year. John Gray is the guy who was the 3rd overall pick by the Rockies out of Oklahoma. I think he could be really effective. If he's not made to be the guy, which he won't be in this rotation, it can be effective. Where do you guys come out on Andrew Heaney?
Speaking of the Angels,
that's another out of nowhere guy.
Gray, by the way, we tried to back as a number 1 starter with the Rockies for years and years, and it just wasn't going to work. That's a good point by you. Where are you at on Heaney there, Dustin?
I mean, he's another guy who's really a back-end guy who pitched, had a great year a year ago, throws too soft, allows too much contact. I don't buy him as a guy at the front end, but if he's your 4th or 5th starter, which, by the way, the Rangers are going with an approach of, yeah, Jacob DeGrom may not start 25, 30 games, so we're going to have 8 or different guys that we can throw in our rotation. All of them have health concerns, by the way, pretty much. Odorizzi, Danny Duffy, Nate Eovaldi. Like, there's so many guys here that have a lot of upside in the arm, but as far as Heaney goes, he's okay.
Heaney throws lollipops.
He's okay. He's an okay, fine. He's a legit major league starter. But, like, their approach is very much like, we don't have a 2 or a 3, so we're going to have 7 or 8 other options there for the back part of the rotation.
I think Gray can be a 2.
Tossing lefty.
That means you're Jamie Moyer.
Yeah,
like
he just
30
throws
years.
lollipops. I always, for some reason, when he was with the Angels for like 6 or 7 seasons, every time I backed him, he killed me.
Yes.
Screw Andrew Heaney and his family. Sorry, just playing.
Certain amount of truth behind every joke.
No, I'm just joking. Total fib. 82.5. Dustin, you going over for the Rangers?
I'm leaning over. I also think Corey Seager has a chance at 45 to 1 to contend for the MVP if this team can somehow everything go right. A lot has to go right. That's why he's 45 to 1. That's why they're a longer shot on the board. But there's a ton of offense here. I mean, Nate Lowe's a 300 hitter at first base. Simeon got off to a slow start, then figured it out. He could be a 30-30 guy this year. I think Jung can contend for AL Rookie of the Year at third base. He's a legit middle-of-the-order bat, just a kid. And then Garcia in right field is a 25-25 guy. And this offense as a whole, did you know they only scored 30 less runs than the Astros last year? They only had 16 less homers than the Astros last year?
Well, because there's a perception that Minute Maid is a hitters and homer park, which it's not, and neither is the ballpark in Arlington. And so, to me, I think if this team can get the pitching and they can manage to score some runs and manufacture runs, I think Dustin is correct in that sense that they could be a little bit more dangerous than you would perceive them to be.
They're close.
Okay. I think exciting times ahead for the Rangers. I agree.
Quick question for you guys about the Oakland A's. Are they going to use Mayflower or United Band Lines to move to Vegas?
So the Las Vegas A's are next. We got a minute. That's probably 40 seconds too much to discuss this team. They won 60 games last year. The win total set at 60.5. It's a farm team. Some decent offseason acquisitions. It's a farm team.
Under. This team, this is horrific. They're going to lose 108 games.
You're laughing, big guy. Look at the roster. It's hilarious.
If it said it's 60.5, I would hammer the under.
This is like the movie Major League. Who are these guys?
Has the vibe ever been worse around a team in a city like it is right now
in any
with
sport?
Oakland
Never.
And the A's in any sport? Just so contentious. Under. 60.5, that's a gift under.
It is.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.